All right, welcome everyone. This is Kristen Vincent, Chair of the Westborough School Committee speaking. Today's Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. I call the meeting of the Westborough School Committee to order. Thank you for joining us this evening at this remote live stream school committee meeting. Due to the impacts of COVID-19 virus, some aspects of the open meeting law have been suspended. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough School Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided for in the order. Town officials and Westborough TV have worked together to hold this meeting via televideo conference and broadcast it on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and streamed online at www.westboroughTV.org/live-stream-government for persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while it's in progress. Any votes we take this evening will be roll call votes due to the remote participation. And if you would like to speak at a school committee meeting during the citizens request portion of the meeting, please email your request ahead of time to school-committee@westboroughk12.org or email the chair of the school committee, that's me, directly at vincentk@westboroughk12.org. Thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast tonight. And as a reminder, a recording of this meeting can be accessed at any time from the Westborough TV website. We have on this meeting with us tonight, Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration, Irene Oliver, Steve Durrett, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee, and school committee members Sarah Dulay and Lisa Edinburgh. Our school committee member Raghu Nandan cannot be with us tonight. We have school committee recording secretary Jen Benton, and also joining us tonight is Johanna DiCarlo, our athletic director, and Sherry Stevens, our director of student services, and we'll hear some updates from them tonight during our meeting. And we have staff from Westborough TV who are handling the live stream and recording of this meeting, and as always, thank you to Westborough TV. Our agenda for this evening is as follows. We'll begin with an approval of minutes from our August 31st regular session. Then we'll have our superintendent's report and reports from Assistant Superintendent and Director of Finance and Administration. We'll have some school committee member reports, building project updates. We don't have citizens requests is on the agenda, but we don't have any tonight. We will hear an athletic program update from our athletic director, Johanna DiCarlo. And we're moving something around on the agenda. We're going to bump up the annual approval of student activity fees and modified tuition payments due to COVID, because that will tie into athletics and athletic fees. So we're going to bump that up. Then we'll hear an update from Sherry Stevens about student services program implementation, getting the school year started. We will vote to approve the new capital planning policy. We will do an annual review and vote of our student handbooks. We will review and vote to eliminate a policy. It's GBAA, policy against harassment, which is redundant because we approved another policy about sexual harassment, so we can vote to eliminate this one. We'll vote to approve an amended school year calendar. We will review upcoming town meeting articles. We will vote to reappoint the superintendent to Assabet Valley Collaborative Board and get an update on the Assabet Valley Collaborative Mortgage Agreement. We will look at a preliminary budget schedule. Budget planning is already underway for the next fiscal year, which is hard to imagine, but we will take a look at a schedule and what that'll look like this year. And we actually do not have a need for an executive session tonight. So it looks like a lot on the agenda, but a lot of it's going to move quickly because it's just some votes and housekeeping before the school year begins for students. So first we'll begin with an approval of minutes. We looked at the August 31st, 2020 regular session minutes. Is there a motion for those?
I can make a motion to move the meeting, to approve, not move, approve the minutes from August 31st.
All right, and a second?
This is Lisa, I second.
Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Sarah?
Dulay, yes.
Lisa,
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve,
Right, yes.
and Vincent, yes. So that's 4-0 with one member absent. All right, so we will move to the superintendent's report. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you so much. So tonight we move away from direct kind of moment-to-moment updates on implementation. So I'll pull that into my superintendent's report and give you a few highlights, because tonight you're receiving other more structured reports around certain programs. So I wanted to begin by, again, thanking faculty for the phased return to the start of work over the last week. And then we're in week 2 of that slow staged implementation. Faculty have continued to help us respond to answering questions around protocols. They've been moving this week towards preparing more. Last week thinking about their personal work return, and now this week looking more at student work return. There's been a fast press of work around schedules, class lists, and finalization of starts of bus stops and bus lists, all of which is targeted to be completed by the end of this week. I want to reiterate a couple of important pieces about that. It's hard when the school year starts where we all default back to those mechanisms of the regular start of the school year. And you have to remember that there's pieces about the start of this year that are very different. You're looking at a delayed start. It's not the 15th. It's the 15th is the first time that, we would be starting with students. That's a full 2 weeks later. So there is a delay in the rotation of a lot of the implementation of things that people are used to already having received by now. So I'm asking for everyone just to remain patient. I think parents have kind of grappled with that this week as they started feeling that they should be seeing bus lists and class lists and schedules. And I know that we had to put out a lot of communication saying, we agree, we're working as quickly as possible. I just want to reiterate that publicly and say that I think that because we gave families as long as possible to review the models and make a choice, it did force us to push back then the staffing, the class lists, and the alignment. So those are moving along very, very well. K3 has pushed out class lists. Mill Ponds went yesterday, and I believe tomorrow targeted for Gibbons to push theirs out as well, and the high school right behind with ongoing updates. I also wanted to just indicate that as a celebration of this week, there was kind of a group of parents and students who did some welcome to faculty at buildings, and it really set a great tone and a sense of energy and welcome to see students and families there to greet people. I want to give a shout out to people that took the time to come out and make a sign and to support teachers and to say welcome back. I think it really was well received by our faculty, and I want to thank you on their behalf. And I also wanted to note too, the last reminder of my report tonight is, I think that, it's an unprecedented structure for us to be in a phase where we're running very parallel programs, but they feel different to people. I want to really be clear that the remote planning timeline and the hybrid planning timeline are running parallel together. The schedules are being developed at the same time. The staffing alignments are being scheduled at the same time, and so are the class lists and all of the details. Teachers have many questions about aspects of their hybrid instruction, and teachers working in the remote model have many questions about the aspects of their remote work. And so all week we've been providing professional development, technology support, and planning time for teachers to start to articulate what those days look like against the kind of the scaffold of the model that we created. I want to reassure everyone that true to Westborough form, this faculty is ready. They will provide high quality instruction that they're known for, and it will be grounded in quality relationships with students, regardless of what model you're in. So we are thrilled to welcome you back to the school year coming up next week. And we want you to know that we will be ready, and that any model your child is in will be prepared with the excellence of Westborough's focus. And that's my report for tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, having these 2 weeks to get ready have been really important for the staff to feel prepared. And I was making the rounds yesterday to some buildings, and everyone, even just front office staff, they just cannot wait to see the kids. They were so excited to see some kids standing outside to greet staff as they were coming in, and they were like, oh, we haven't seen them in so long. And they're just so excited to have, the little people back in the buildings and to see their students and just to connect with them. So it's good. We're getting there. Daniel, what do you have to report tonight?
I just want to echo what Amber's saying, that you know, the faculty has appreciated having the 2 weeks. The 2 weeks is, I mean, given the circumstances, in some ways doesn't even feel like enough time, because it's just complex what we're doing, and so everything feels intense, but they do feel well supported, and we're, you know, asked every day, sending out a request for feedback in terms of what's on the faculty's mind and making sure to tend to what their concerns are. And that those have been very useful for us. And then our department heads and curriculum directors have all been, you know, working closely with the faculty to make sure that they answer their questions and provide them with resources they need to be successful. So you know, my hat's off to everybody who's working really hard to make, you know, the beginning successful. And I'm confident that next week will be great. And, you know, looking forward to getting the year started. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thanks. Yeah, we're so grateful for all the work our teachers are doing to get ready. It's one of those, seems like one of those school years you're just sort of never quite ready, and we'll just get started and do the best we can. So we'll be as ready as we can be. Irene, do you have anything to share? I know you have some other reports coming up tonight.
Yeah, I'll just give my updates later. So nothing
Okay.
at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move to school committee member reports. Sarah, do you have something you'd like to share?
I do not have anything this evening.
All right. Lisa, anything?
I just wanted to thank the parents who have been very patient during this period of time. Clearly, we're very used to having all of our ducks in a row as parents ready to go. And it's hard when you don't have all the information like teachers and schedules and bus times and all those things. But I really appreciate the patience of those who, you know, are holding off and knowing that that information will come. And those that have been impatient, I completely understand also, because it's hard, you know, and yet when that bell time starts, your child will be connecting to some teacher on day 1 of September 15th. So, you know, all the information will get to you, and, you know, we will be able to begin, and we'll feel like, you know, we'll be smooth sailing hopefully at that point and be able to move forward. So thank you all either way, because I get it. I get both sides of that. So thank you. That's
We're
all.
going to be in rapids all year. So that's the analogy. It's the rapids. We're kayaking in rapids. It's going to be, you know, team effort to throw ropes to people who need it. Like, it's going to be a busy, really hectic but exciting year. And I think you've got a team in Westborough. I agree with you. I know it's hard for parents. One of the things that makes Westborough great is that our parents come prepared to send us students ready to learn. And so it comes from being in a high performing community and in a high performing district that of course they expect those things to be ready. And we're almost there. So again, I thank you, Lisa.
Steve, do you have anything before we get to building project updates?
No, I'll defer to until then.
Okay, thanks. And then I just wanted to share a couple important dates coming up. There's going to be a special town meeting on Tuesday, September 29th at 7 p.m. It's going to be indoor at the high school. And then there's going to be a special fall town meeting Saturday. It's a little bit later than it usually is. It's going to be Saturday, November 14th at 9 a.m. indoor at the high school. Typically, we have that fall town meeting in October. But this is going to be not until November 14th. And actually, later on in our agenda, we'll be sharing something that we may be bringing, that we have to bring to the fall town meeting and talk about how we're going to do that. I also wanted to thank all the families who participated in welcoming back staff and faculty this week. The cheering and the thanking of teachers was wonderful. And also, I know some parent groups were organizing snacks and things, and it's just all really appreciative, just to show our appreciation to the teachers. I know kids were just really happy to be standing even on the sidewalk at their school and just greeting their teachers as they were coming in. And just reminding parents and caregivers that There is a lot of communication coming from the district. I couldn't believe the amount of emails going out yesterday and today, but I believe it because there's a lot of information to share. And so there'll be district-wide emails around transportation. There's a very lengthy but very important email from the nurses. I've saved that. I keep digging back into that email. It's full of great information and kind of a to-do list. So there's some information there you need to pay attention to. And also district information about meal pickup. And then there'll be a lot of building-based emails coming your way too. So principals have been sending out updates and emails, and now that class placements have been going out, you'll get emails from teachers. So it's on the parent. We have a lot of homework to do as parents. So we have to keep up with these emails. You have to open them, read them, print. If I just bury it in my email, I'll never get to it. So I need to print it, put it on the kitchen counter, so I'll actually read it and pay attention. So it's a lot, and we understand, but we all need to do our part to get ready for the school year. So that's my update. And so I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who may have some building project updates for us.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat part of what I said the last time we met and explain what's been going on this week for the neighbors, which has been unfortunate but needed to be done. There's been a tremendous number of trucks moving up and down the street for the last 2 days. That should finish tomorrow. If not tomorrow, depending upon weather, it'll finish on Friday. And what's been going on is we've been hauling the glacial till that's in one of the piles off-site. They actually are going to the water treatment plant for use by the town for other purposes. But the reason why is because the structural steel discussion that I had last week, we will be receiving approximately 4 trailers a day starting on September the 15th to begin steel erection for the failed school. And the dirt removal was done so that we could create a plateau for the crane to sit on. So as the fill was leaving the site, crushed stone was coming in to make the pad for the crane. And again, we apologize to the neighborhood. This sort of was sprung on the building committee in the last couple of days, and as an individual, I had to apologize to a couple of neighbors because we didn't keep them informed, which we had promised to do. But I think we've rectified that with both the building staff as well as our supervisory staff, so that hopefully we won't do that again. In addition to that, there's a notice going out to the neighborhood in regards to the structural steel erection and the arrival of trucks. That project of steel arrival should take approximately 4 trucks a day for about 2 weeks until it's all unloaded, and a fair amount of it will be erected as the trucks arrive. So that's the story for this week, and as people are beginning to see and will see shortly, the building rise out of the dirt, which is fortunate for us. In addition to that, I think I mentioned the fact that COVID-19 has had an impact on the way construction is being handled, partly because of Governor Baker's order that construction people can't carpool, which means that when the building steel is erected and we start doing things like creating the floors and walls, we'll have additional people on site, and we will trying to figure out where to put those cars. And so the building committee's minutes are available on the school website, and anybody who has concerns about that discussion, please read it. It's quite complicated. We have a number of different options, of which none of them are good, and all of them cost money that we don't have. And so the building committee, with other help, will be discussing what our options are, and give the town an opportunity to figure out whether we spend a lot of money, a little bit of money, or no money in terms of how to handle this parking problem. And it will, I guess people will be given notice around the various committees for us to come and talk to them. My version happens on September the 15th with the planning board, and a discussion with them in regards to the site plan approval of parking, potential no parking on the local streets. Discussion with Board of Selectmen with the potential use of Newtown acquired property, which Kristen just mentioned as part of the special town meeting being noticed on the 29th of September, and other options that are also expensive but wouldn't require either of those two solutions. So I'll leave it at that, and people should pay attention, please, because again, it's money that if we have to spend it in a way, it's just a temporary solution to a problem for which the town will ultimately get no benefit if it's the option, the least expensive option. Other ways we might be able to save the money would be, as I mentioned, the special town meeting approach to solution to the parking problem. I'm sorry I ran on, but it's an important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Very important update there. Yeah, a lot of impacts to the neighborhood there. So our apologies to them for not knowing about that ahead of time. Exciting to see that the steel is going to arrive, and we'll see a lot of progress over there quickly. And parking, yeah, that was a concern. We knew that would be a concern. And with COVID, it's becoming more of a concern in terms of trying to get people to carpool and run shuttles or whatever. So keep us updated on that, and happy to support you and all the other boards and meetings you'll have to attend to try and figure this out. Thank you. So next on our agenda is citizens requests, but we don't have any citizens requests tonight. So we can move on to our athletic program update by Johanna DiCarlo. Welcome, Johanna.
Hi, everyone. How are you
Good to
tonight?
see you.
Nice to see you
Good.
all. Great. I don't have a real formal presentation or anything. Just wanted an opportunity to provide a few small updates about the fall seasons that are quickly approaching, and then certainly provide you all an opportunity to ask me any questions and things that maybe our community needs clarified. So I know Amber mentioned the word rapids, and that this school year is going to feel like being in the rapids, and she couldn't be more true. Just this afternoon, got a huge range of emotions. One, as we were preparing for the fall seasons to get up and running, I received an email finally from Cape and Islands about the repairs to our track as well. So that was a wave of real positive emotions. And then the realization very quickly that means I need to now displace our fall teams in the midst of this COVID situation again, for 10 days to 14 days. But, you know, with the same grace that they have been exhibiting, you know, since this building project started. When I told our fall coaches this afternoon when I saw them, they again just handled it in stride and said, again, Joanna, whatever you need, it's got to get done. We'll adjust. And so that's really good news that Cape and Islands has reached back out to us and will be coming hopefully next week to begin the repairs to the track that are a result of the original installation and the weather challenges that we faced at that time. So it's not a knock on Cape and Islands. It just was us rushing them to get that project done, and the weather not cooperating led to some faulty material that never really took. So they're going to be here next week, which is awesome. But the community should know that starting probably the end of next week through 2 weeks, that facility will be shut down completely to all of our teams and all of our community members. And in that same vein, I just want to mention as well that, you know, typically we have operated under the auspices that the track is closed during competitions for the high school. So anytime we're hosting a soccer game or a field hockey game, but oftentimes if it's a 4 o'clock game and there doesn't seem to be too much traffic, we sort of let those people continue to sort of run on the track or be around the facility. But we are going to have to start to realize that starting September 18th, whenever we are hosting games, that we cannot have any outside community members in that facility. So the track will begin to be closed between the hours of typically 4 and 6, Mondays through Fridays, beginning September 18th. We're under strict restrictions from the state into how many participants we can have in those areas. And so, in any of our fields, the ones at Mill Pond, the ones at Gibbons, the upper field, and the lower field at the high school, we're going to have to really limit who's in those facilities during the time that our kids are using them. So thought that would be really important to sort of get on record tonight. And then I can absolutely work with Amber and whoever else to see if we can push out communication to the greater community around those particular things. All right. So just to quickly review, we have begun really formulating what the fall will look like. So the MIAA, EEA, and DESE have authorized high schools to allow sports in the fall in modified formats. And the sports that we'll be offering in this first part of the seasons are boys and girls soccer, boys and girls cross country, golf for the boys team, field hockey, and then at the middle school, we'll be running an intramural cross country program. So we'll still be able to take about 100 students at Gibbons into a newly formulated cross country program that Lynn Sullivan and Brian Paulus have been really working hard at and are having a really good time with going ahead with plans for that. So I think that you all have sort of given me the authority to move forward with those plans. Our Midwatch League has been working the last week or two to come up with a set of protocols and guidelines that I believe came across your desks at some point this week. I think that they were pushed out to you. So those were created within our league, and that will be sort of our guiding document throughout the course of the fall season. The MIA still plays a really large role in this, but they've kind of handed over jurisdiction to the local school districts and the local leagues to really make these seasons work, considering that they will not be sponsoring MIA championships this fall. So really just to sort of review that, it will be competing in a pod of 4 or 5 schools. We'll be competing against only those 4 or 5 schools. I should have that pod information by the end of the week, and then we can turn those around to schedules, hopefully by the early next week. So I know families are probably anxiously awaiting what the schedules will look like and what days they'll be playing on. I should have that out and publicized by the middle of next week, I hope. All right. We've faced just a couple of challenges. One maybe we'll talk about today that Lisa's been a part of and Irene has heard us talk about is the transportation of some students back to campus while they're on their learn from home days or the members of our standalone remote program, and being able to provide transportation back to campus for them. So we're in the process of having those discussions with the transportation company and locally. Right now, I think I have about 40 students that would be requesting transportation, and we're hoping to have finalized those numbers by the middle of next week, and then potentially come back to you all or Amber, whoever it is, and see if we can get a final decision on whether or not we'll be able to provide some buses for students that are at home to get back to campus. Okay. We did have a great day today, so we decided to initiate our coaches into what it will be like to be a Ranger come September 18th in our athletics department. And so for our coaches meeting today, we sort of put them in the position to act like an athlete for the afternoon. So we actually did things like meet in the locker room space and see what that will be like, walk them through the athletic training room and see how small that is and that we won't probably be able to use that, figure out how to get water jugs filled as an athlete now, put them on the field with soccer balls and had them run through a few drills with their masks on to see what that's like as a student athlete, socially distance our kids all along fences so that each one of their own personal bags were 6 feet apart so that they had to feel what that was like. And so we spent about an hour kind of walking through what it will be like to be a student athlete, come September 18th and to have to really work with those modifications. So that was a fun way of getting our coaches back on campus for the first time since March as a group. We were able to be outside. It was a beautiful day, and they did a great job. And so I think they walked away feeling like they can do this, that they're confident they can do this, but that they have a lot of work to do around sort of organizing their practices. One of the things that we did talk a lot about today too is our philosophy about what the season will be like. And so, we sort of want families and student athletes to know, and we'll have a meeting with the parents probably September 16th is the date I'm looking at, that our philosophy around athletics is going to not change dramatically, because this has been a district that's been founded in, promoting sportsmanship and the love of the game over winning championships, even though we do that really well and have fun with it. And, that's really sort of the mindset that our coaches and kids need to go into the fall seasons with, is that, we're really fortunate and lucky to be able to be playing games. And without the sort of anticipation of MIA tournaments at the end of the season, we're hoping that they just really embrace the opportunity to be on the fields, to be mentored by some great coaches, to be with their friends, and to be physically active. And I know that's sort of the environment that our coaches have embraced and are looking forward to providing for them. So with that said, I would be more than happy to field a few questions if you guys have anything specific about the athletics program or timing of things.
Joe, do you just want to talk a little bit about football?
Sure. So there's 3 sports that we traditionally offer in the fall seasons that have been moved to what we're calling the fall 2 season, which is now scheduled for late February through mid-April. And that is football, volleyball, and cheerleading. Football, the state has not moved football into a moderate risk category yet. And so the way that the rules are written and the guidelines are written around high risk sports, which football still is, we couldn't have any competitions. There could be no contact. There could be no tackling. So in that case, the MIA said, we can't play football right now with these guidelines. So we moved that to the fall season. However, as a league, we decided that we would allow the coaches of those kids to still have contact and do some conditioning sessions, some football related activities, but no pads, no helmets, no contact, no tackling, again, none of those things. So those kids will get 10 sessions each with their coaches to accomplish that. So on a day where it's a Navy day, any football player that wants to come to practice that day will have a place to come from 3 to 4 to get conditioning, to get weightlifting, to get sort of chalk talk, and to have access to their coaches. Volleyball, we moved to the fall season as well. They'll have the same sort of setup where they're able to practice on the same day that their cohort is in school learning. And the remote kids will also have access to come back on one of those days. We'll designate a day for them to come, and they'll get 10 practice sessions with their coaches in sort of the same vein. And the reason behind the move to the fall too, that wasn't mandated by the state, that was chosen by our league, because a lot of our schools are using their gymnasiums right now as learning spaces or cafeterias. And the fact that I don't think anybody right now feels really comfortable about bringing those kids indoors to play sports. So that's where that decision was sort of made. So those folks will have access to their coaches in some capacity. We'll be able to do some work with them, but they will not be their regular seasons.
So before they ask questions, one other thing that I really appreciated you outlining for me is a sampling of some of the ways the other sports have been modified so that they can be playable. And I wonder if you could give a sampling. Sure,
I've communicated this in a bunch of emails. The MIA has some great links on their webpage to see the actual sport modifications. But in the sport of field hockey, they're playing 7-a-side, wearing masks. Nobody can ever pick the ball up. Every time the ball needs to be moved to another player, if it's an out of bounds play, they have to make sure that they're using their stick to do it. Soccer, there'll be no throw-ins. They're trying to take contact out of the game of soccer. We'll see how well that works with high school age students. I'm sure it works with 4-year-olds, but not sure how it'll work with high school age students. So the MIA has done a pretty good job of giving us a lot of bulleted points about what those sports are supposed to look like now under these circumstances. The biggest change, I'm going to be honest, for everybody is going to be the limited number of fans that we can have at games. So right now, in order to be part of the mid-watch Worcester County Athletic Conference sort of pods, we've all agreed to only have 2 fans per student athlete at our games. And that if we do 2 fans for home games only, that will keep us under the state guidelines of 50. So right now they're telling us we can only have 50 non-participants at our sites. In this way, we're going to have 22 kids on the field. Each one of them will have 2 fans for home games. Fans will not be able to travel to away games right now. And that's sort of a bummer, and we'll reevaluate that if the state opens up those outdoor limits a little bit more. We're hoping to get them to 100 before we really start, in which case then would be able to allow fans to go to away games. But for the foreseeable future, student athletes will be given 2 passes of some sort that their fans will have to bring with them on that day.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it's something, and we'll make the most of it.
That's what I was going to say. It's something. Something is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Questions from committee?
I don't really have any. Well, just one quick question. We're still doing, obviously, like junior varsity and varsity for all the sport, or whatever, whichever ones have those.
Yeah, so the plan will be probably, what I anticipate is 2 field hockey teams, JV and varsity, 2 girls soccer teams, JV and varsity, 3 boys soccer teams, because the numbers typically warrant that. So we'll have a JV2 program there. And then golf, will probably be able to keep 16 golfers and still be able to accommodate those tee times. We're going to start to write into daylight issues sooner than we normally would, because we've lost 3 weeks. I think we all expect Triple E to continue to plague us. Again, we just keep rolling with the punches. Whatever it is, we'll take care of it. So those are probably going to be the levels that we'll be offering and what we're prepared.
And then the rules are the rules are the same for whether you're at a JV game, varsity game, or.
Yep, everything. Yep. Yep. We'll probably have limited JV2 games. So we want to use that more as like a developmental stage for the boys soccer program. And again, sort of get them interacting with our coaches and getting used to our program. But I would foresee us having 12 varsity games and maybe 8 sub-varsity games somewhere along that line. See if we can pull that off right now.
Okay. Thank you. Very thorough. Thinking of everything, like, and as the reverse, it's kind of reverse from the late bus. If we don't need late buses, then we can just reverse the late bus into a bring kids back to school bus, maybe?
Yeah, it's one of those, it was one of those really interesting conversations that every time I had with somebody else surfaced something else for me to think about while we were doing that. So the timing is tough. So if kids are supposed to be at their computer until 2:15 and we want to start practices at 3 o'clock, we can't just run one bus through town to pick up 20 kids. It's going to take an hour. And so the meeting that we had today was pretty productive, and where they think that they can use the buses that we'll be taking to our away games. So those people aren't already doing routes. And if we do that and say I have 2 or 3 buses scheduled for that day, those buses would go out and do routes in the neighborhoods and get back hopefully in a shorter time frame. But again, it's going to come at a cost. It's going to come at a cost of $150 a bus per day. And is that something that we can do, can manage? I think that's a conversation for this group to have. But the bus company logistically thinks that we can pull it off now and get kids back to campus for 3 o'clock. Because the other problem is I don't want to have practices at 4 o'clock and 4:30 with kids not having a chance to go home and come back. And I can't have them, so there's been times where we've had 300 kids waiting around, for a 4 o'clock practice, but we can't do that in these times. If we give them unstructured time, it's not going to go well. So we've got to try and start those practices, I think, as close to 3 o'clock as we can.
Right. Well, thank you for thinking of everything. And I'm so excited to hear that Cape and Islands is coming back.
You and me both.
Always unfortunate, but that I would be very excited to see that new track go down. So thank you for working on that. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Lisa, you got any questions?
I do. I wondered about a couple of things. One was which sports are not happening either at the high school and middle school? Are there sports that just are not going to happen this season and have not been pushed forward to a later season?
No, the biggest change is that the middle school won't compete against other middle schools, and that it'll be more of a Gibbons-based program that we're running more intramural style than interscholastic. So it's still happening. It's just that we're not putting them on buses and we're not having other middle schools come to us, that we're just going to run meets within Gibbons.
Okay, so that sort of fits in that there's still programs going on. They're just shortened or they're modified. Another question is about roster size. I noticed that the away games have a limit on the number of students who can go away. Is that because they'll be providing their own transportation or because you're creating a limit for the away games?
We're creating a limit for the away games because of transportation for one. So our typical buses are going to hold 22 students and a couple of coaches. So we're not having them provide their own transportation. We're transporting them. And by limiting it to 22, it gets a team on a bus. And then the other reason why is because of those limits, we can only have 25 players on the surface, on the playing surface at a given time. So again, or 25 participants, I think it's called. If it's 22 players and 3 coaches, we at the mid-watch level decided that if we kept things at 22, the room for 2 or 3 adults, we were going to be able to maintain all of the guidelines that the EEA has put forward. Which ones are those ones? Those ones might be, yep, EEA has put forward for us in terms of participation limits.
Okay. So I guess the other question really is about, for the school committee is about money, whether transportation, the costs, and I guess it's the timing issue of, are they still going to get out at 2:15? And does that change something, does it change anything academically for those students who have games, or is it just normal? Is it still a normal flow of academics where they go to the end, or are they getting out early? And how does that affect the decision-making for us, which is really looking at the monetary piece? That's the place that we look at it, which is, does this, I think talking to the school committee members right now, does this offset something else that is already out there, or is it something that's just extra? And I think about transportation not being provided for several sports in our own town for other reasons, and does this make it different because we're in this situation where half the students are home, we have another 10% or more even are we bringing people from the middle school back for practices also for the intramurals on off days?
So the intramural program, those kids will only run on the day that they're in school. So the one thing we haven't talked about is the standalone remote program to bring those back. But I wouldn't suggest that we look to do that with the intramurals the same way that we won't be looking to do that with football and volleyball. Those are sort of completely voluntary programs, and whatever the kids get out of those will be great. Yeah, there's a couple of things here. One is just talking in generalities and past practices, right? So when we have practices directly after school, our district has always felt like we've owned the kids. So 2:45, we transport them to games. 2:45, we own them to practice. Anything that starts happening at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So if we have basketball practice, some of you may have had kids that have been in our basketball programs. Practice didn't start till 6 o'clock at night. At that point, we didn't feel as if the school district had a responsibility to get them back to practice. Okay, half days, we do not bring kids back to practice on half days. On half days, it's the responsibility of the family to get the kids back to practice. But our practices are typically always still at that 3 o'clock time spot because we have a lot of staff members that are coaching for us that can't be at practice at 12 o'clock. Okay. But with that being said, there also is throughout this entire COVID situation, and Amber and I had a passionate conversation about this the other day, inequities that keep rising. And some of our students feel as if, or not feel as if, it's evidence that those are the ones that are facing some of the more difficult challenges in navigating this COVID pandemic. And where do we fall with that? And those are going to be the kids that most likely need the transportation back to campus. And so will they not be able to access our programs if they can't do that, if we can't do that? It has been probably the most challenging decision, not even because I'm not making the decision right now, but just in playing the scenario out, it's been the most challenging one that I've faced during this entire thing, and something that we started talking about and thinking about as athletic directors back in May and April, saying, this happens, we're creating inequities everywhere. And the last thing I'll say on this is that we are, though, one of the only districts that's seriously considering doing this. None of my other colleagues have taken this on and have decided that it's something that their district is going to support. And so they're all expecting families to get their kids back. Those are just the facts.
So I'll speak as my recommendation to this. I feel very strongly that we transport students back. I think that it shouldn't be who has a car and who doesn't. It shouldn't be who has a non-working parent versus a working parent. It's clearly an equity issue that I'm not comfortable that we would not support. I consider it part of the pandemic response planning. And it's been our kind of philosophical view as a district. We don't handle fine arts, physical wellness, athletics as like special subjects, they're core. And that's why our kids are well-rounded and balanced and amazing kids, because all of it's core, it's not extra, it's all part of the philosophy of what it is to be educated in Westborough. So I consider the mission of athletics core, as I do fine arts and other programs that in other districts have been eliminated, or they've shifted teachers to cover other things instead of doing music and PE. Like, we haven't responded that way. So my recommendation to you is that we provide the funding for this, and that I will work with Irene to do an offset of one of our COVID expenditures. We'll push it on to the 4,900 grant if possible, or we'll come up with an alternative funding source through one of our revolving accounts, but we have to cope with it. I also think we're going to have offsets in the cost of transportation, and I'm going to push on Irene to push on transportation, which she's already started doing, for cost offsets against transportation they're not doing for us that they expect to be paid. So I certainly expect that they could substitute transportation where we do need them to make transportation, for which they will be paid. So I think there's plenty to negotiate here. But in terms of moving forward, I think we need to be clear to kids that we'll transport them so they're not worried about it. So that's my recommendation to you tonight.
I just want to get a clarification about sports that we have not provided transportation for in the past. Swim, I believe it's gymnastics, swim. I'm asking that because was that always also an equity issue in the past that is not really addressed?
I don't know if I put them in the same category, just because those kids were here on campus, and it was more about getting them to the facility that we were able to sort of do. We either, to be honest with you, we snuck them on buses at times. We tried to carpool. Other teammates took them. So everybody in that situation was moving towards that facility. The reason why we don't just flat out have that is because the bus company always told us they don't have room. They couldn't give us another bus. We're not being told that we can't do it. We're being told we can make this work as long as we're willing to take on the expense and deal with, the logistics of it, which I think we all are, or I know I am. So I just want to know, I'm not saying I want this or don't want, it has nothing to do with me. I'm here to serve the community and to serve you all, and we'll make happen whatever it is that this group decides. I just wanted to make sure everybody had the facts. So I understand where you're coming from, Lisa. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I can see your parallel. And it would be my dream that we could provide transportation to everyone, but we've always been told every time we asked the bus company, they didn't have another bus and that we weren't going to be doing it. So
I certainly think it's let us get open, let us implement, but I certainly think, Lisa, in the subcommittee work you do with Irene on transportation, we add those to the agenda for discussion. We look at the cost impact and what the work is. You've got ski team, you've got hockey, you've got swim team. And the structure of that, as we look at it, is also some of the awkwardly weird times has driven some of that. So, but certainly, I had a hockey player, so it's a 5:30 practice. And so, there's things to figure out there, but again, I think it's worthy of us to bring it to the forefront. And as a school committee member and on that subcommittee of transportation, it's perfect to put it on our list.
yeah, I would love nothing more than to be able to transport those kids. And I know that we do manage to transport some of the kids from the high school to Mill Pond on the girls soccer program because I have the minibus and I was paying somebody a couple bucks a day to go take them. So in the scenarios where we can solve those problems, I would love to absolutely be able to give kids after school all the transportation that we could provide.
Thank you. I think that's an important equity issue to continue to look at. And I know that this community in the past has always pulled together to get kids over to the ski ward or get kids over to swim and tennis to swim, in terms of parents, piling in kids in their minivan to drive them over. So I know that this time, it's challenging to do that when you're going to say, hey, I'll bring anyone over to swim team. And during times of coronavirus, if cases rise, parents might not be comfortable doing that. And I totally get it, having a bunch of kids that you don't hang out with in your car. And so I think providing transportation is something we can definitely look more at. And I know the committee is already seeing how that happens. And I think with a new transportation company, we have opportunities. So like Johanna said, in the past, we've always been told we don't have an extra bus, or we can't do that, or we don't have drivers. But maybe with a new transportation company could come new opportunities for that too. We'll have to just wait and see. I did have a couple other questions about athletics. I can ask those. So first of all, I know that there's a deadline coming up for submitting student registration. Johanna, can you just remind us about the deadlines?
Sure. The deadline on Family ID is September 13th. We highly encourage you all to not wait to the deadline though, because things like, I did put a question in there about, would you need an option for transportation back? So that registration will drive some data. So the sooner that folks can get online and register their student athletes, the better. It's also going to help our coaches plan, because again, if teams get above 25 for tryouts, we may have to break those tryouts into 2 groups and stuff. So all the information's on the website. I have sent 2 emails home to the high school parents and to all of the high school students over the last week, encouraging them to get their registrations in. So we're at about, I think this afternoon when I looked, we're maybe at like 215 or so. So they're getting up there a little bit, but we're still missing quite a few.
Good. Yeah, we'll keep reminding people to fill that out. And this was my first time filling that out for my daughter, and it takes a while. Like that's a lot of information to input into those forms. So
yeah,
you definitely need to dedicate a good hour to it, I think.
The beauty of that is, though, the next time that you do it, it'll all be pre-populated. So you only need to make changes. So for many of our students, especially if they've come through community ed or some of the other programs, even at Gibbons, hopefully some of their information is backloaded. The medical history is lengthy, but we feel as if it's worth having.
Yeah, definitely. And then just a quick question about, so I know there is a lot of gameplay changes happening for field hockey, for soccer. Will teams have a chance to have multiple practices before games start so they can practice some of those changes.
Yep. So we're going to use September 18th as our opening date, and we're going to use that for safety meetings within teams and just to sort of start getting familiarized with being back again, do some conditioning, but not start assessing for tryouts yet. We felt like that wasn't a great thing to do on day one, is to start just, that's the old model that worked when everybody had been prepared for that. But with all of the changes to the way that the kids will be even entering the facility and putting their shoes on and sanitizing their hands and wearing masks, day one, which is September 18th, will be much more team meetings and safety protocols and sort of starting to get fit or starting to get physical. And then on Monday, September 21st, we will have our tryout sessions for those sports that will need to make cuts. So Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday will be the start of practices and tryouts. And the only teams that we typically will make cuts on are boys golf and boys soccer, depending upon how many register. But for the most part, field hockey and girls soccer have not made cuts, and cross country will take everybody. And then the first games will not be scheduled until October 5th. So they'll have a solid week and a half once teams are selected to be practicing.
Great, good. I know there's a lot of changes there, and everyone's going to be in the same boat. So we'll figure that out. Well, thank you so much for coming and providing this update. And, I'm sure we'll have you back because there's a lot to figure out and a lot to, like you said, we got to roll with the changes and we'll make it work. And good to hear that the track will get the repairs. So we can work with you to figure out how to communicate that out to the, various groups in town and let people know.
But overall, we're in really good shape. And again, I think the adults that will be running these programs are in a really good place and in a good mindset. So that's going to transfer to the kids seamlessly. So, and I'll stick on. I think if you guys wanted me to talk a little bit about activity fees, I can stay on for the next segment.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Yeah. So I think we'll transition over to an agenda item that we're taking from lower on in the agenda and bumping up. We're going to take a look at our annual approval of student activity fees and modified tuition payments due to COVID. And the approval of student activity fees is an annual requirement, and we typically do it either in the spring or the fall, before school begins. So I think Amber and Irene are going to walk us through some changes happening this year.
Irene, I'll let you take point, and then
Okay.
Joe and I can answer questions.
Sure. So in your packet this evening, there's a memo from me regarding the preschool tuition rate and the athletic activity fees. I'm just going to read a little bit to you. It's due to the delay in school opening and the two-platform learning, the preschool tuition will be modified as follows. Children withdrawing from preschool will be issued refunds less the 25%, which we reserve for the administrative overhead processing. The remote learning program for preschool students will be a half-day program only, and we will reduce tuition by 50%. This means that the cost for RLP will be $180 per month. The balance for any overpayment to date will be applied for future tuition payments. Once students return to in-person instruction, they will begin to get charged full tuition. Tuition for the hybrid model will remain at $360 for half day and $880 for full day. And so for athletics and clubs, the recommendation for activity and club fees is to reduce activity fees for the upcoming school year in anticipation of the shortened athletic season and modified club activities. So Gibbons intramural sports will be $50. This is our recommendation. Gibbons clubs will be $75. The high school sports and clubs will be $100 per event, and then we'll keep the district-wide family cap at the $600 cap. And then there's also, so I don't know, Joe, if you wanted to talk to the activity fees, if there's any questions regarding that. But in addition to this, any activities, clubs and so forth annually just need to be approved by you. So the clubs that we have, the activities that we charge for fees and so forth just needed administrative approval. Are there any questions?
I have a question about cost. By the way, I should go back just for a moment and say, I'm not against transportation for our students, especially during COVID. I'm really more looking for how we're paying for this. And so when I look at this as well, I think I can understand how we can offset the transportation for services that were not rendered under the bus transportation contract that can be now exchanged into a different piece of the transportation for athletics. But this one also comes to mind for activity fees, which is my perception, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the fees that we receive from families goes towards stipends for clubs and coaches. And so if our revenue goes down, do our stipends go down? And if not, if I want clarification about where does that come from? If, you know, Irene, if you could answer that.
Yeah, I mean, there is some money in the revolving account that could carry us for a short amount of time, but I wouldn't recommend that this continue year after year, that's for sure.
So I ran the calculation, and we could, if we had to, have charged no fees and would be able to rotate through the year successfully to cover stipends that are carried in the model, that are some in budget and some are offsets. So there's a combination. And before we made the recommendation of cost, I ran the numbers with Paige and reviewed them and feel confident that it's appropriate that we mitigate the fee impact. Families are facing financial hardships. I just want to hold that out there as well during this time. And I also feel like, given the shortened seasons, that it's appropriate that we make this modification. I do believe, however, that this was budgeted activity that we did budget for. So there is our remaining budget. It's not like we don't have the funding available for these planned activities. This was already budgeted and rotated into the budget that Irene brought forward and that you approved at town meeting. So the funding is in place to carry these clubs. This is working forward against those to keep that revolving account sustainable annually. So you're looking more towards like future, and I then used the revolving account to make sure that I was covered in the future for at least a year to give us recovery time. We're actually covered for 2 years of a potential recovery window. There are other expenditures we wouldn't take out of that account in order to give it recovery time. But I believe it's something that is, appropriate in the circumstances that we're facing. I respect the thoughtful questions, Lisa, and I appreciate it as well, given our budget constraints. I think this is a recommendation that merits what families should pay. And I know that our clubs and coaches will run robust, modified programs, and I believe they should be paid for them. So I think we're in good shape.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the answer, hearing how that's going to happen. And I also think that as families, we need some relief, and to have a little bit of financial relief is really welcoming and appreciated, I'm sure.
If it helps to hear this too, again, just kind of benchmarking ourselves against other districts. The other ADs that I talk to, again, on a daily basis right now, we're all having these same conversations with our school committees and our superintendents. And so we're constantly checking with each other. What are you guys doing with that? What are you doing with that? And the majority of towns are foregoing activity fees for the upcoming year or cutting them in half. That seems to be the biggest trends. Very few school districts, it sounds like to me, the ones that even have activity fees, because we still have some holdouts out there that haven't had to charge them, are not keeping them at the full capacity, the full amount. The intramural discussion is something I've wanted to have with you all and with Amber for a couple of years. So maybe we will revisit that next school year, even if we are back to sort of our next normal, because I just think the intramural programs are so widely accessible, and the fees have always felt a little high there for me. And then the $100 for the high school interscholastic, I think, is going to be pretty much where we want to be, considering that we will be running at about 2/3 capacity in terms of the number of games, the number of weeks that these kids are involved. So I think the family should see a reduction in fees there somewhere. The other thing you have to remember too is some of my costs, and I haven't run the numbers completely. If Irene needs them, we certainly can do that. I'm anticipating that our programs are running at 2/3 capacity in terms of savings as well. So, with 1/3 less contests, that's 1/3 less transportation, 1/3 less officials. So there will be some savings in the athletics budget, as that could probably help out there as well.
That's good to hear. And I definitely welcome the intramural discussion, because I think you're absolutely correct that the accessibility is huge and the participation is great. And I look forward to that one.
Yeah.
And has the information about preschool tuition been shared with families yet, or is this the first time they're hearing it? That's been shared. Amber, you're still on mute.
Sorry. It's been shared.
Oh, okay.
Because
Okay,
we're getting
great.
pressed on by families. We had to give them some, I said,
Yeah.
tentative final decisions, but we've needed to let people know because we're going to lose people. So I would seek your approval on these tonight if possible, please.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, to reduce that, and also just for clubs and activities, because they're not going to typically look like they have in the past. So some might shift to a virtual or sort of a hybrid, like half kids meeting in person and some hanging out online with them. So I know our teachers will make it great either way. We're looking to have a vote to approve these. So is there a motion for that?
I make a motion to approve the new activity fee schedule as outlined tonight.
Thank you. This is Sarah. I can second the motion.
Okay, any more discussion?
And sorry, this does include like all other clubs and stuff at the high school as well. I don't know, art club, math club, environmental club, beekeeping. That okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I can't think of any more right now, but
There's over 200 of them, so just pick an activity, and I'm sure there's a club for it.
yes, and I know they're looking forward to getting back to their clubs, so this will be great.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Sarah.
Dulé, yes.
Lisa,
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve,
Durrett, yes.
and Vincent, yes. So that's 4-0 with one member absent. So good. I'm glad we got those approved. And I think Johanna, you had said that for sports fees, you're not going to collect that till the end of the season anyway, right?
We're going to collect it. No, we're going to collect it now.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was once we decided to reduce it, I think that was a change.
We're going to
that
collect
Amber-
it now. And if
Amber was hoping for.
Good.
No, because we will chase people and they won't pay us.
I
No,
think
that's
we made-
great.
I think she made a great suggestion, and we'll further discuss it, that there could be the possibility that if we collect it within the first week or two and something happens and we can't play, maybe we can roll that over the next season. So I just hope people can be flexible, because again, we're really hopeful that we get the entire season in, but we just don't know.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's good. I'm glad I asked, just because I remember filling out the form. It said we wouldn't collect it till the end of the season. So, but now people pay up.
That was the original thought, if we kept it at 200, just in case we had to prorate it if the season was shortened a ton. But now that you have been so generous to cut them in half, we will change those forms and start collecting within 2 weeks like we normally do.
All right. Checks in the mail.
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
guys.
thank you
Thanks for
so
everything.
much.
And all your
Thank
support as
you.
always.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right. So we will now turn it over to Sherry Stevens, our Director of Student Services, to give us an update. So busy, Sherry. Thank you for all your work. You've been working nonstop all summer, and it keeps going. So we look forward to hearing from you and what you have to share about what's going on in the district.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and share this update with you. I do have a PowerPoint, so I've negotiated with Daniel to present that on the screen. And I'll just apologize in advance if my eye gaze is off camera as I look at the larger screen, which will help my eyes stay focused. So thank you. So we can move to the first slide, Daniel. Which includes, I've been doing a lot of thinking. It was a very rigorous summer, as you stated. And I just, as you noted earlier, so many of you, I want to give a shout out to Westborough faculty and colleagues for just the rigorous pace and the deep thinking and all of the work that went on over the summer. It was pretty amazing. And it made me think, not that we're a district that really settles and sits. We're always thinking and innovating, but this really took it to another level. So it made me think about the quote here from Albert Einstein. And then I feel like most days, maybe I've had more questions than answers. I think Amber can attest to that, because I would walk in and say, I have another question, or what do you think about this? And so one of my what ifs is, what if this unprecedented time of forced change and imperfection provides to the innovation, discovery, and silver linings necessary to really transform the future of public education? And I do think that's what's happening. And so on a lot of levels, while it can be stressful and anxiety provoking, I'm really excited because I think through this summer and even having teachers back, like the innovation of the work is so energizing and we're so ready. I would just say to parents to, receive your children back, and we wished we could have all of them back. And if that was an option, we would certainly entertain it. So let's move to the next slide, Daniel. We talk a little bit about special education programming and the learning models that you're so familiar with now. I just wanted to point out, and I won't spend a lot of time, but under the key documents, Daniel, there's links in the yellow. So if we just look at the data for a moment. And you can see here, there's a couple of tables. The first table is kind of highlighting numbers from the summer survey work that we did with parents as numbers were coming in. And you can see the distribution of special education students, as they're participating in the learning models by school. So that's some interesting data. And then below that, the smaller table is highlighting as the work became more refined and we considered what we could do for 4-day students, and then more recently, the 4.5-day students based on complexity of need, you can see how the numbers are shaping up there. So 172 special education students, have been recommended or invited to participate either in the 4 or 4.5-day programs that we're offering. You can sort of see the trajectory of numbers and, parent communication and confirmation, which has been ongoing both with the coordinators and liaisons since they got back last week. It moves us to a place where there's about 28% of our total special education population that's coming in for our in-person services. So if we pop back, and I apologize, Daniel, to the slide, I would just take you into the school reopening roadmap, and we can go through that quickly. This is a document that went out to parents from liaisons introducing themselves last week in each of the schools, and translated in various languages to kind of give parents a framework for thinking about preparing their children to come back to school and also having conversations with their children about coming back to school. So it highlights health and safety, and there's some visuals. I'll apologize in advance because it is more geared for K-3. Than some of the older students. I certainly got feedback on that and I was happy to receive it, and we modified where we could. It gave students a sense of what their teachers will look like, sort of fully donned in PPE, et cetera, and what to prepare for there. And then as we keep moving forward, sort of the healthy protocols that we want to stress around mask wearing and hand washing and all of those pieces. And then, certainly letting students know that they can ask any adult to help them as they are getting used to their new environment. And then it also moves through the presentation. There's information on, what does my classroom look like? What do the hallways look like? How are things marked? And, how will I begin to navigate sort of this new and strange environment, which will become the new normal? We talked a little bit about the transportation piece for parents, so they're not looking for white vans, but small yellow buses for students who are transported, and some questions about how parents approach the buses. Can they get on the vans? How should they prep their students with PPE for the vans, et cetera. And then going further into information about social emotional learning and mental health, and how we're beginning to not only prep our staff, but certainly get our curriculum up and running for to best support and serve our students as they arrive. It went through some more particulars around the learning models in the next slides, and then it gave some sample schedules and talked a little bit about the 4-day or 4.5-day in-person programming, what curriculum and instruction will look like, and then IEP meetings, which will also be conducted virtually, as we begin the year with meetings. It talked a little bit about our assessment practices, and there was a summer task force that looked at that. We know that we have cases sitting there for testing, and people are really eager to get started with that. So it was more around aligning the safety protocols and making sure that we were well organized for that process. And then just some key in terms of relationships and communication, all of the contact information for special ed coordinators and liaisons were reaching out individually to provide that to parents. So that was just sort of a roadmap and with some resources to help parents get focused on getting their child back to school. So going back to the slide, there's also linked in there a sample of the learning plan, which is required by DESE.
Which slide should I go back to? Are we in the roadmap document or the other document?
The other document, Daniel, the presentation slide with the yellow links right there. So we're now on the learning plan.
Okay.
And this is
I should have been trained in advance. You got a complicated linking structure here. I don't think I need to renegotiate our terms.
Okay, all right, that's fair. I'm totally open to that. You're doing a great job. And again,
is this where you want me to be?
This is perfect. Yes. So again, we're going to kind of just roll through this, and then we'll go back to the original slide. So this is based on DESE guidance. So each special education parent will receive a learning plan similar to the remote learning plans that you received in the spring. The difference is that we're fully implementing IEPs. So this plan will highlight based on the model you chose for your child. It will tell you a little bit about the model, and then it would also bring you into a specific plan that will outline your child's schedule, all of the links that you'll need to be successful with technology. It will delineate if there are differences in how your child's IEP services are going to be delivered. It'll be clearly defined for you here, and collaboration.
Daniel, can you scroll that a little bit more? Thanks.
A little more, Daniel. Let's see what looks like a schedule or table. There you go. So this, again, will be very detailed. These are due to come out next week. We had to get teachers through the door and get our general building plans in place. And your teams and liaisons are actively engaged and working on these. So they're due out on or before next Friday, the 18th of September.
I think it's really important to get a chance. I know this is challenging for Daniel to have this many documents, but I think it's important, given the range of discussion we've had about special education, for you to see the depth of work that is going on, the range of communication, the amount of planning that takes place to implement schedules against modifications of IEPs to be thoughtfully done. So I think it gives you a sampling of all the stuff that's had to be created and implemented and shared. So thank you, Daniel, for navigating.
No problem. No, I don't mind at all. Obviously, I was just joking.
So going back to the slide, the presentation slide, Daniel.
Okay, hold on.
So can I ask a quick question? Is there one of those for every student? Like when I was going through that, is that individual charts for every student with the link?
Education student, yes, on an IEP, yes.
That is an impressive document because it has the links to their Zoom meetings. It has all the teacher contacts. It has their.
Yeah, I guess I want to give a couple of shout outs here. Part of this is based on the model that Kim Tynan and Kristen Robertson created for summer program, which we had so much positive feedback from parents about because everything was in one place. It was easy to navigate, etc. And then my coordinator team really also took it to next level. We've had multiple subcommittees running around assessment, around services, around plans. So you can see it, we're not only moving across models, but everyone's moving and shaking to get done what we need to do to satisfy both DESE and parent communications. So Daniel, I won't push you through any more links. I will say that this special education parent communication that's noted on the slide that we were on is just, again, it's just the summary of what was sent out to you in August. It does include our special education fact sheet, which I will update again, hopefully, if not the end of this month, 1st of October. And I would like you know as well, parents, that the Student Services webpage is being revitalized. And so, be posting all of these documents there as well. We hope to have that up and running as well by the 1st of October. So Daniel, thank you. If we move to the next slide, you can kind of see sort of how we're thinking, how the team is thinking. It was the staff reentry and training period last week in this, and we're so grateful again for the 10 days. We're eager to get students in, and we want them to have a strong reentry and the adjustment period they need to feel safe, secure, and confident to move into the trajectory of academic work and assessment and all of the things that we need to get done with them. We're holding parent engagement and collaboration sort of at the core of our thinking, and liaisons were excited to reach out to parents last week, and we're committed to keeping you in the collaboration loop and certainly taking your feedback, which has made this whole process stronger as we've been working to build strong documents and processes, etc. We do need some time to gather data to understand where your child is. And again, we're eager to move into assessment and committed to starting IEP supports and services. So next slide. Again, as part of our teamwork this year, and we've talked about a lot about this, and we continue to see how it's playing out in our greater world, but really looking at our equity and inclusion and keeping that close to the work to really continue to understand and promote work around equity, around cultural proficiency, to really look at the critical practices that we have in place and to determine how and where we need to deepen those in terms of making sure that we're promoting anti-bias education and engagement, and that we're really proficient in both our social and learning environments. And again, keeping universal design for learning, which was part of our inclusion initiative last year, at the forefront, so that we're, planning with the most marginalized students, at the very core of our planning and implementation. Next slide, again, takes you through where we are with social and emotional learning and mental health. And again, that's been a core focus of our reentry. And it's been so exciting to see what's going on in the schools, what has been this week and last week, and what's being prepared for students as they come back to make sure that they're feeling a sense of wellness and strong and confident as we move into the core academic year. I would also make a note around support that, we have mental health professionals in each of the schools. They're really well prepared for your child to come back, and, you should feel confident to seek them out as needed. And we also continue to maintain our relationship with William James College and the interface referral service. And so there's a link here for that as well. Next slide. Something else that we continue to move forward with and we're really excited about is just our literacy initiative, which we talked about when I presented in the spring. So just sort of two new aspects of that is the implementation of Lexia, and the bullet points, stand. It's really for all K-6 classrooms that teachers are already receiving training on Lexia. It's really a tier 1 adaptive program in K-6, and students will have the opportunity to be assessed so we understand where their reading levels are and can monitor that strongly throughout the year. And then there's a nice technology-based independent instruction component to it, which fits so nicely now with our virtual learning world. And Daniel, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. Thinking on Lexia.
No, not that. We're using it both in gen ed and our special needs classrooms, and it's a very robust, targeted program. I think you said it well.
Okay, great. So running parallel to that, in our tier 3, we're implementing RAVO, which is a comprehensive research and evidence-based program for students struggling in grades 2 to 4th around reading fluency. And we had anchor teachers in each of the K-3 schools trained over the summer. This work was developed by Marianne Wolf at Tufts Center, and it came strongly recommended through our professional consultant, Melissa Orkin. So I just want to make sure that we're continuing to implement and improve our systems for struggling readers. So that's my quick update for you this evening. I'm wondering what questions you have. I'll make sure that this presentation gets posted. It's out for translation as we speak.
Thank you, Sherry, for that update. And I know embedded in each one of those slides is hours and hours and hours of work that you have put into behind the scenes, working with staff and faculty and families, and ultimately with our students this year. So I'm wondering if any other school committee members have questions or comments for Sherry. Sarah, you want to go ahead?
I guess I don't have any questions right now. Just thank you, as everyone else has, for all the work put in. I know, like Amber said in the beginning, it feels like we're behind, but I don't think we're any more behind than anyone else. We're probably more advanced than other people. And this actually just makes me really excited to have kids show up in the building next week. So that you guys have all that in place. I think it's going to go really well. I think people are going to be very happy. And I think the kids are going to be so excited to just get back to their routine. So thank you for all your work. And I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming and presenting to us too, and getting on the website, which is my favorite thing, because when people ask, I refer them to the website. So that's good to know that your website's getting revamped, and just easy access to the information helps the communication too. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I mean, as things were really, I think one of the things that's hard to keep track of is that no one group is ahead of another, and yet I think that your group was ahead of another. In other words, even if the communication initially, meaning when everything was sort of still being planned, where parents couldn't see the work being done, even though it was being done, that's part of getting parents up to speed on where you guys were at. It happened, and I knew I've had faith that it would happen. And for parents who are concerned about regression and having their kids who might be in the evaluation process back in the prior to the spring, or need testing or results of those and a plan in place. It's all moving forward, and it's nice to see that you're going to be focusing on social emotional learning to start to really give that a support as we head into it, and doing assessments to make sure we see where kids are at, and then moving forward with the kids who either potentially need to be on plans eventually. And I saw that in your presentation tonight. But I really didn't have questions, because I feel like a lot of it is about the communications that are happening now. And I'm even seeing your charts about where kids are going to be in person. Good work. I feel like we're on the same page now, where I knew it was happening. I just didn't know that everyone else knew it was happening. And I think that we see it. So thanks. It's been a lot of work. I recognize how much, it's so much work. So thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. Steve, I know we can't see you, but I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to offer up on Sherry's presentation.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your efforts. And it's always good to see Daniel caught flat-footed when somebody comes up with some IT stuff.
I'm glad to provide you with some entertainment.
Thanks, Daniel.
So Sherry, I thank you for all the details you provide in your presentation, even just that chart to kind of see what you've done to provide in-person services for students, and for so many students, bringing them in 4 days, 4.5 days, and continuing to support students with special needs who have elected to choose the remote program, or coming into school is not an option for them due to medical reasons. And I know that your staff, now that you have them all back finally, are working so hard to figure out, putting this all into place and figuring out who has who, and caseloads and all that stuff. So I know that communication is ongoing and getting out to parents. And like Lisa said, it feels like we're behind, but we're not. We're kind of right where we need to be, because we can't rush any of this. If we rush it, we're going to make mistakes. Something's not going to be right, and we have to get everything in place before we present anything to families or kids. So I think it's okay to go slow. You want to go slow, and then if we go slow now, we can go fast later. That's how I look at it.
I think it's important. I want to comment on closure around Sherry's presentation and be clear that we put well-framed presentations in front of you, because you are the representative body in the community that is to speak on our behalf with confidence that our programs are strong. And we take feedback and we welcome feedback, and we know that there are always people who feel we can do better, and we miss things in blind spots, but you need to feel confident, and I want you to know how confident I am that we provide very high quality special education services in this district with a commitment to meeting the needs of every child. And I think when you see the kind of quality work that's going into making sure that parents have what they need and students are getting service delivery, it doesn't mean that we know we face people that feel differently, and we understand that their children are each individual and unique and have challenges, and we will work to meet them. But when you have to also then understand the programming as a whole, as a part of the delivery of instruction in this district, we have incredibly strong special education service delivery in Westborough that's inclusive in its practice and contemporary and progressive and very well run under Sherry's leadership and that of her department. And I think it's very important, given the pressure that we've certainly recognized in special education families, who we will be the first to say we understand that they're under immense pressure. We're providing quality, and we will do a good job by them. So I want to thank Sherry for putting together such a strong presentation for you. I encourage you to spend more time looking at the documents she provided, so you can speak with confidence about what's being provided in this district by her fine team. And I want to thank her for presenting tonight. So thank you, Sherry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sherry.
Oh,
Right.
and she broke her wrist, and she's still.
What?
Oh, wave
Oh
your
my
cast.
gosh.
Wave your cast. This is a rough year for the team.
Sherry.
Okay.
Tough.
You must type one,
I got out of my boot and she got into a cast. Like we're just
must
rotating
type
there.
one-handed then, very
I know.
quickly.
I mean, it's a long way from the heart. Have a good evening, everyone.
Oh, take
Bye,
care.
Sherry. Thank you very much. Take care.
Uh,
All
that's
right.
not good.
Those are
So,
two really
so who's
important-
next? Is that Irene or me? Like,
No,
you know,
No more injuries.
no
So you should be
more.
able to pick up pace here. I think the majority of this is going to be approvals and things for you. I think the energy
Yeah.
and focus for the other things really was these two important presentations for you tonight. So I'll turn it over to you and we should be able to push along hopefully.
Thanks. And I look forward to these presentations. I missed them in the spring because our focus was on so much other work. And so I look forward to being able to cycle some of those back in this year. Okay, so next is vote to approve the new capital planning policy. And we had looked at that at our last meeting. The capital planning is just an annual process that the town goes through, and the capital planning policy sets guidelines for making choices for capital projects. Last night, the Board of Selectmen voted to amend the comprehensive fiscal management policy by replacing Section C, the capital plan, with this new capital planning policy. And I think tonight what we're looking to do is to have a vote that would be voting to support this planning policy. It's really the Board of Selectmen that passes the policy and puts it into action, and we can vote our support of it. And I think that as a school committee with this new policy, we maintain our authority. So it's still our control as to what projects we want to bring forward to town meeting. We're in control of those final decisions. But this updated policy can really help to improve the communication and sharing, have things become more transparent and strategic between all of the town boards and the town departments. So I am looking for a motion for this, just to vote to support this planning policy.
I make a motion to approve this policy As-
So
as described and read. Yes.
is there a second?
Sarah, I will second the motion.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a very quick question about who fills these out and what's the oversight once it's filled out? Do we see it? I'm just curious about the process.
Well, I think the process runs as any other capital planning process. So there is departments submit their proposals, and the committee, the capital planning committee, looks at those, and we have good representation on that committee, and we have people from, it's all across the town come together to make those decisions and kind of look. I think it's a sort of a 5-year look. Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of looking out 5 years and thinking about where are these projects and what makes sense to have them land. Do some have to come before others, and looking at the overall debt strategy to make sure that we're not looking at these big spikes in how taxes are raised. So I think it's this policy. I mean, this process has always happened. This is improving that policy and improving even the amount of information that a department would have to submit when they're talking about capital projects, so that it's consistent across all departments.
I would certainly defer to Steve to speak to it since he is our longstanding representative on the committee along with Bob Ferguson. So I would turn it over to him to explain any pieces of process depth. I mean, Steve, I'm sure you could speak to it.
Well, I think one of the things about the process as it has been under the Capital Expenditures Committee, based on the policies, I'm going to say of the Board of Selectmen, but I'm not sure from where, but the activity of the Capital Expenditures Committee was reviewing everything, but basically only being able to recommend to the town a limited amount of money based on a percentage of the annual budget. And I'm thinking, it was in the order of $1 million each calendar year going to town meeting from the Capital Expenditures Committee. And therefore, many of the things that we as the school committee would bring forward, such as a school or some other big project, was outside of the capability of the Capital Expenditures Committee. And as a result, we went to town meeting in effect, arguing a specific animal, even though it might have, let's say, had there not been a restriction by the Capital Expenditures Committee, they may have recommended it, but ultimately, because it was bigger than, let's say, their entire ability to award or to review, it became an orphan. And so I think remodeling the program to be all-inclusive and allow the Capital Expenditures Committee to rank, let's say, anything that comes before the town as part of the process, I think would be a good change in policy. I'm not sure that exactly that happens this way, but as we know from past discussions in the last 2 years, reviewing the impact on or tax impact in terms of borrowing and future needs to repay the debt is a significant piece of what this turns out to be, and should be very helpful in the future. One of the things that was reported, and I can't remember where, of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, we rank 30th in terms of taxes. That means we're from the top to us, we're 30 out of the 351. And so, as we have discussed, I think, not only privately, but with the Finance Committee and others, whatever Westborough is doing overall puts us pretty high on the table of taxes. And so if this helps us get to the point where, based on our size and our needs, we're not inordinately greater in taxes than others, I would say that's also a good purpose and reason to do this. So it is an interesting change. I think the structure of how this whole thing comes together and how each committee and department plays in the new program will be interesting to see how it plays out. But the bottom line is, for sure, we need to figure out why our taxes are so high as compared to, say, others around us who seem to have reasonably close schools, reasonably close services. Meanwhile, we're $2 or $3 a thousand higher. So I guess ultimately I will support the vote when we get to that. And I guess I'll leave it at that and see how it all plays out.
Well said, though. I think you summarized the quality of a return, Steve, to a balance of a full, robust discussion of all projects at the Capital Committee, where they get a really in-depth look against timing. And I applaud it. I think it'll be the benefit you've articulated. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel the same. Good fiscal management, and it brings us into the table. So it's a collaborative effort. So thanks for that answer.
I guess I would say we probably won't get much better, but on the whole, I hope we don't get worse. So if we don't get worse, then it's a good program.
Hopefully it'll just help things improve. But yes, thank you, Steve, for that explanation and your thoughts on that. Always appreciate your expertise there. Any other discussion? We're ready for a vote. So we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Sarah.
Dulé, yes.
Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Correct, yes.
And Vincent, yes. 4-0 with 1 member absent. All right. We are at the agenda item to review and approve student handbooks. This is an annual process of approval. And today we've received red line copies of student handbooks. We have one sort of universal elementary handbook to cover Fales, Armstrong, and Hastings. And then there's one for Mill Pond, there's one for Gibbons, and Westborough High. And so first, I think I'll ask for a motion to approve them. And then if we can see if there's any discussion about what we saw in the handbook. So is there a motion?
It's Sarah. I can make a motion to approve the handbooks for the school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Lisa. I'll second.
Okay, great. Any discussion about what you saw in the handbooks?
I just had a couple things. In the elementary one, I just noticed housekeeping wise that the Freiburg Parkway address was still in there. I think it was under Daniel and Irene as reporters on something. But anyway, so we should probably clean that up now that we're back at Forbes. And then a couple of things along the way. I know that dress codes are kind of a hot topic right now. And I know the high school seemed to have done some work rewording it and things like that. And I'm thinking that that could be like something that would evolve along the way. But I liked kind of what they had come up with. And then when I looked at Gibbons, I thought, why shouldn't Gibbons just be similar or the same? Because Gibbons still kind of had some of the older language in there. So I thought maybe that was a suggestion to just maybe marry those two or make them the same, and then maybe even down to Mill Pond too, depending on I don't know how people feel about that, but those would be my suggestions.
Mill Pond did put in some changes.
They did, you're right. They had a few changes, but the high school ones seemed to be more inclusive and more the new language and things like that. So I don't know if that would trickle all the way down to the Mill Pond level, but maybe.
I think that the amendment, I mean, I love the fact that you've read them carefully and I appreciate the feedback. I think it's getting the alignment and process and timing for a lot of, the high school got a head start on theirs and we're able to bring it to fruition. It typically is that we would coordinate the collaboration on that language either this year or next. But certainly I'm happy to push it back down as a recommendation that we make, that you can make the motion to require the language to be cohesive. You have that authority, and then we would roll it back to Gibbons that way, or you can request them to move forward with an amendment as soon as possible after reviewing it. I mean, I defer to you in the sense that that's why you have the autonomy to review them and approve them, because you give it a different kind of look. So we can proceed. I think the long-term goal is to get that language parallel. High school took point on it, and Gibbons would indeed follow. You could make it a request or a requirement. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I guess maybe a request. I would still give them, autonomy to decide what happens in their school, but maybe just using some more of that language. And, theirs kind of just seemed more like a checklist at this point. And the high school one seemed more flowy and inclusive. So just. Yeah,
and I think middle schoolers require more structure, so it's going to be a balance, and they might need more of a checklist, but they might need to modify their language. So I would agree with you. It's a difference in developmental pieces, but the language should evolve to be more parallel.
Yeah, thank you.
So I had a couple comments about, I'm not sure that the handbooks totally correlate with the time of COVID, meaning that, there were aspects like the cafeteria process, so for instance, the elementary lunches, hot lunches. So there's no change to the COVID changes. And I'm not sure it needs to be, whether there can be a supplement later when they realize all the changes, that parents are getting communication about it. Like, for instance, parent pickup seems like it's different at Fales versus Hastings or Armstrong. What is the process? I think it might be something that would be helpful in the handbook. Lunch payment collections, the wording in the elementary schools talks about seniors. And so there's a discrepancy about that process. Talks about senior graduating activities in the elementary handbook. Food allergy protocols are probably different based on COVID, and because we're using different protocols for lunch. I don't know that would be in this handbook, but I feel like it's a supplement for what's going to be different. Then even just activities, this, it talks about the 3rd grade strings program, but I did like that they added the school committee policies to the end of the.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Just little things, very little things. And the one thing that I really also liked is they have a communication protocol in the elementary and the Mill Pond. Who do you call when there's an issue with your child? Teacher first, and there's a process. That I really wish I would see at the middle school and the high school level. I've seen it in news and notes before. I've seen it in the high school, Brian Callahan, once a year comes out about their communication. It would be helpful for it to be in the handbook, because it changes. The communication protocol changes when you switch from Mill Pond to Gibbons, or from Gibbons to the high school. because there are department heads, because there are team leaders in Mill Pond, Gibbons, but not the high school. You know, so there's different communication protocols. I think that would be helpful in it. Again, Mill Pond's parent pickup procedure, I think would be helpful. I loved that the curriculum is embedded in the Mill Pond handbook. You can really read everything. And I think the last thing is that in the high school handbook, the link for back to the table of contents actually doesn't work. Links that says back to table of contents. All of those links don't work right now. They did at some point, but
Yeah, they'll definitely they'll have to reactivate all links once they get their approval before they post to the website, definitely.
And then there was something about the phone and electronic devices at the high school. There's a typo on that one, and it's a little bit different this year. I think if they were to review it, they would see the differences in that one section. I'm sorry, there's so many little tiny details, and they're not big things. They're just little things. But that's all I have for now. I thought overall it's a much improved. I mean, I've been watching the handbooks for 4 years. They've come a long way, and they're better than they've ever been. So a shout out to all the groups that have been working on them over time.
No, thank you. I acknowledge that they have improved and there's more growth to make. I think that I anticipate that we will share the handbook with an overlay to the COVID communications taking precedent over all policies for the year, as opposed to then redoing the whole handbook this year and leaving that as the defer policy so they can see how things usually run. And then we'll put it with, again, the communications around process that they're receiving at the building level. And Daniel and I anticipate that what I would like to do is take the minutes from this meeting and use them to push feedback back to each building. We have WLT tomorrow, so we knew we'd be able to review this with them and kind of look at talking it through with them. So I think that the recommendations from the minutes will flow to them for both short and long-term improvements. And we would use the COVID overlay, which is what a lot of districts are doing, to say that that takes precedence for the year.
I forgot one thing. I'm so sorry. Can I add one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when a student came to our citizens requests, there was a discussion about dress code at the high school, and it was specifically about do-rags. And I bring this because in the handbook at the high school, it specifically talks about being sensitive to the diversity and inclusiveness of our town and of our school system, that they made changes based upon those aspects. And when I did some research after that meeting, the do-rag is really a protective covering for, it seems very cultural to protecting hair. And as much as it is not, it says that is not allowed in our dress code, I would love for us to reevaluate the question of why that is out and to look at it from a new lens, which it was sort of brought to our attention. And I think it's it could be a very good discussion for the leadership team to reevaluate it, because it does seem like a cultural dress. And I'm not sure that if there's a reason that it's been kept out, but I would love us to reevaluate that.
I was going to defer to Daniel to speak on it. But yes, I totally agree. We're certainly seeing it as part of a complete profile of work that we'll do throughout this year and moving forward. And I think in some cases, further conversation, I think they want to incorporate opportunities to bring it to larger audiences for discussion and to do other pieces with it. So again, I think stage one, we updated the dress code to make it more contemporary and more clear, holding building autonomy for process and discussion. And I think then based upon the feedback here, we take all of these pieces back and continue evolving practice. So thank you.
I mean, I guess I would add is like, is there a reference to it now in the book? I don't think so, right?
It is in the high school handbook as a piece of the dress code that has been, ruled out, that you're not allowed to have them unless it's a medical or religious reason. And it doesn't appear that the do-rag itself is utilized for a religious or medical reason, but it does have a cultural adaptation to some people's, the way that they dress. And it appears to be a protective hair covering for good reason. So I think if you were to have that discussion, that would all come out, because it probably wouldn't fall under medical or religious.
So I will, at this point, I
Okay.
would defer to the high school until we get further information. So again, I think it'd be good to reflect it in the minutes and incorporate it into the broader conversations we want to have. And I think, again, I would want to wait till we can speak on behalf of their review. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that ties into the citizens' request that we had, and also just a lot of the anti-racist work that has been happening in conversations. And so I think it's truly appropriate to take some time to look at that this year. So thank you specifically Lisa and Sarah for looking really carefully at those student handbooks. And we had a motion to approve, and we had a second, and we've had discussion. And I think that we could go ahead and take a vote to approve them now, knowing that updates to them might be made. It might be something as tiny as fixing a typo, or looking at adding additional information. I think Amber was right. We don't want to rewrite these handbooks. They need to stand here because hopefully that's the type of school we're going back to. And we just need to add in additional information for parents and students as we navigate the school year. So we'll take a roll call vote. We'll start with Sarah.
Dulé, yes.
Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Right, yes.
And Vincent, yes, 4-0 with 1 member absent. So we'll approve those and get those updated on the website. And we will, like Amber said, add additional information as needed. The next thing on our agenda is to vote to eliminate a policy. The policy is GBAA, Policy Against Harassment, including sexual harassment and discrimination for employees and adult volunteers. And we have just recently approved a policy called ACAB, Sexual Harassment, which was related to the new federal Title IX updates. And so this current policy, GBAA, sits there and is redundant. And so the suggestion was made to eliminate GBAA so that these two policies don't conflict with each other, and we don't need an old policy because we've added in a new policy. But it's policy to vote to eliminate policies that you don't need anymore. So I will make a motion to eliminate and get rid of policy GBAA.
Second.
All right, Steve, second. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Dulé, yes.
Yeah, Lisa.
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve.
Right, yes.
And Vincent, yes, 4-0 with 1 member absent. All right, now we will vote to approve amended school year calendar dated 9/2/2020. And so Daniel, do you want to share with us what the update is?
Sure. I mean, there was just, it's the shifting of a one Friday for another in terms of making it full in-person versus half day, all remote. And so you may recall, and I guess I'll share the screen so you can see it so it can be super clear. All our Fridays are going to be, just 1 second. All the Fridays this year are going to be half day remote days, where the teachers work with both cohorts in the hybrid model. And so they will, let me see if I can make this bigger. So every Friday for the hybrid model, and also if you're remote, are considered half days, so that half the day is instruction with your teacher, and the other half of the day is professional development for our faculty, given all the new sort of demands in terms of their curriculum preparation that they need to be doing for this, radically different way of delivering instruction. But we were going to make exceptions where on hybrid days, when there was a holiday on a Monday, that or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and there were days where like one of or another cohort was going to miss a day, they would make up for the day on Friday. We had originally thought that the Rosh Hashanah, actually the Yom Kippur holiday on the 28th, instead of making up the day on October 6th, as this calendar shows, so Cardinal would have missed the 28th, and the makeup day then is that Friday. Am I doing this right? Not the 6th, sorry, October 2nd.
There you go.
So it's Cardinal missing September 28th on a Monday, and then the makeup day is now going to be Friday, October 2nd. The prior calendar that you voted in, so this is kind of a technicality, was the September 25th. We had a certain logic to it in terms of why we were doing that, but upon further reflection and discussion with the Teachers Association and also among principals and such, we decided to not make an exception for that particular week. And so because that week there's a holiday on Monday, rather than have the prior Friday be the makeup day, we're going to stick with the more general pattern of having October 2nd be the makeup day for the Cardinal group. That is the only change that is before you, and just the parents have this calendar. It's on our website. It has a little footnote. It says pending, approval by the school committee. This is what has been sent out to everybody. Everybody is currently expecting that you're going to approve it. But if you decide not to, we can gladly send something out and say, actually, here's a new version of our calendar, and we're going to stick with the 25th. But we would recommend highly. It's basically what currently the teachers are expecting, the parents are expecting, and so the school committee, we're hoping, will approve our change.
Okay, no pressure. Just to further clarify, though, it's Cardinal. It's the ease in week, so it's Cardinal actually A to L, I believe, not full Cardinal. Right? Is that correct?
Correct.
That is very good. You are like trying to trick me here. I'm going to go to our website and illustrate for parents. Can you see that I'm going to the website?
Not yet, but maybe.
Because is it M to Z or is it A to L?
I think it's A to L because I think it affected me personally, so that's why I knew that.
I'm just going to make sure. We go to our supplementary calendar.
Yeah, and this has already been shared in the supplemental calendar, so
Right.
this isn't, it's just, this is
This is an action to make your vote in alignment with the modification that Labor Board recommended. And in collaboration with Labor Board, it made sense.
yeah.
Sarah, what did you say?
I believe that it's Cardinal A to L that was moved.
It's Cardinal M to Z.
Really?
That is on the 2nd.
Okay.
Because they go in order, meaning
Yeah.
A to L is first and M to Z is 2 days later.
Oh, right. I know why. Because you bumped it. Because you bumped the other day to Wednesday.
Yeah.
So yeah. It was originally Cardinal A to L was that Friday, and then you bumped Cardinal A to L to Wednesday, and then Cardinal M to Z to the next Friday. I knew it affected me somehow.
The key takeaway here is
Read the calendar.
Read the calendar. The calendars that we have on our website, but yeah.
I do think the calendar is making sense now to people. They've had more time to look at it. I recommend we vote this as it stands and get the continuity of people feeling like things are making sense.
Sounds good. Is there a motion to approve this calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve this calendar, the last calendar. Can we call it the last calendar?
The final calendar. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Good for you.
We're officially calling it the final calendar. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I have not just to add anything, but will there be plenty of announcements for the 2-week remote period after Thanksgiving and winter break? Because it's not on the calendar. And I realize that the remote only program already has a remote program during those 2 weeks, but it's not on the calendar. So
Yes, we will make sure we send out
Yeah.
tons of communications. People can only take in so much content at this point. So we got to get open and get through the door and have Thanksgiving in front of us, which would be a great problem to have. And we'll definitely push out a lot of communication.
And it's in the supplemental parent calendar that Daniel created. So it's in there.
And another question that has come up from parents that I want to make sure gets onto your radar since we're talking about calendar, which is the seniors' last day of school. People have asked, so I just want to make sure it just doesn't go by the wayside and that eventually that gets answered. That's in sometime in May and June. But
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Yep.
They
that's all.
won't let us forget.
They're thinking way too far ahead for us right now, but I get it. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote to approve the calendar. Sarah?
Okay, wait, one last little tiny thing. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving is a half-day remote
A
day?
half day, no, it's a half day cardinal day.
Okay, all right. So that's a half-day hybrid day in person. That's a half-day in-person
Yes,
day.
we'll get there in person time on that rotation.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Julie, yes.
Lisa?
Edinburgh, yes.
Steve?
Correct, yes.
And Vincent, yes, 4-0, 1 member absent, so approved. Okay, so review town meeting articles. So we have 1 article for the November fall town meeting.
So thank you. This is a short update tonight because I think how the article will be presented is a secondary discussion that I wanted to have with the town manager. She and I were having informal discussion on it today. But what I want to do is bring forward to you that for the fall town meeting, which typically would have been the October, which is now November 14th, so pushed back. So we have a little window, but I want to get the approval of the amount in front of you, seeking your approval, and then the formatting of the article or of how it gets brought forward to town meeting would come secondary at our next meeting, most likely. Right now, I'm seeking your approval for us to forward a $59,195 request for the completion of the contract negotiations with tutors, secretaries, and custodians. So those are the ones you've settled since the budget, and we would be seeking that amount to pay for those increases of the year 1. And then I will be discussing, and we will bring back to you a formal model, either the draft of the actual written article or a proposal that it would be presented as a part of overall town budget updates, and our line item would simply go up in that amount, and they would seek an overall approval of the whole town budget with updates in it, which would expedite town meeting and do some other things with it. Either one would be viable as long as, if there were questions, we would answer them. And I think the town manager is looking to maybe just have that streamlined, less warrant articles and more simple procedure. And I'd be open to either. Right now, what I would want to do is seek your approval of the amount. Again, $59,195 for the settlement of those 3 contracts.
So are you looking for us to take a vote on that to approve that?
Yeah,
tonight?
I definitely want to approve the amount, and then the format I'll bring back to you for final decision.
Okay.
So move.
All right. Is there a second?
This is Sarah. I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, Sarah, you get us started.
Julie, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Correct, yes.
And Vincent, yes, 4-0, 1 member absent. So, right, and you'll work with Christy to kind of figure out the format of that.
Yep, definitely.
Great. So we need to vote to reappoint our superintendent to the Assabet Valley Collaborative Board. It's an annual requirement as part of our membership in the collaborative, and I know Amber does great work on that board there. So is there a motion?
So move.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say so moved. I was gonna copy Steve. So moved.
All right, second.
I'll second instead.
Okay, great. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Dula, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Red, yes.
And Vincent, yes, 4-0, one member absent. And then Amber, you just have a quick update on the AVC mortgage agreement.
So I had presented to you earlier in the year that they were seeking purchase of an additional space in the upstairs of the current AVC facility in Marlborough. They have secured a mortgage, and it will come to implementation where they will then get the space for renovation. This is simply has to be acknowledged for you as an update to that. I will send you the minutes of the total mortgage agreement later. It doesn't require your approval, but when I get the minutes from the last meeting where they acted on accepting the mortgage, I will share it with you in my next communication. But this is to make sure that our minutes reflect that you've been updated, that ABC will enter into a new mortgage agreement for additional programming space for the upcoming year. And that's all it requires. It'll go into the minutes.
Okay, great. Good to hear that they're able to expand and they're doing great work over there. So
Yep.
good. Okay, and now we are at our looking at our budget schedule, preliminary draft of a budget schedule. And we got that in our packet to take a look at that. And hard to believe that we have to start planning our budget for next year, but we're actually behind because we would have already been doing this work, right, Irene?
So
That's
Irene
correct.
will take us through it. Definitely it's an update because it doesn't require your approval, but it's just to get you a picture of where we are. So I'll turn it over to Irene.
Yeah, so it's following the same timeline as we have in the past in the same format. So I mocked it up, just changed the dates to align with what we've done in previous years. Typically, the budget workbooks go to the principals and they update, align their budgets, their individual line items. And in the process, Amber and I meet with each one of them individually. It's this is speed budgeting by far, and update with the school committee liaisons for the ABC. I don't know who they are this year, but I'll find out pretty soon. And then, as you can see, the different dates when we will be giving you presentations. We expect that we're hoping that the liaisons will follow the same format and meet with us after the presentation to you so that they could ask any questions that they might have. So we could answer them at that point. And then if you follow down to the very end, we get into December where you actually vote the budget December 16th. And then shortly after that, we give the budget to the selectmen and the town finance committee. So if you have any questions, I can answer. Or if you see a date that doesn't align with something within the school committee calendar, just let me know and I can fix it.
Okay, we can look that over, and I know Amber might tweak the starting process here when we have meetings with other boards and things too.
I think it'll be different this year. And until I have a little bit more time to look at how we would modify it with Irene, I at least want you to see the timetables we will at least preliminarily look at, but I anticipate some condensing of some of these other meetings with the AFC. We're not, I don't think, going to do the large meeting that we did in the past last year, which format wise we thought was beneficial to have all the boards together. But I am looking at a joint communication where I would surface any large big ticket items that we want to call out to AFC early in their projection to collaborate with the town on that so we can keep some of the communication flowing without still having that meeting. So there's some things I want to figure out with Irene, but I think the two major things we have to realize is the school committee voting the final budget and backing the submission to the town have to be anchor dates that we back up from. So should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, the one thought I have and looking at this timeline is, I don't know whether the school committee and Amber, you've considered asking the town to, historically the town of Westborough holds their budget season much earlier than other towns, and in this year in particular. given the level of exhaustion of the leadership team and the number of unknowns that there are, having town meeting in March seems to be, for a number of reasons, not just because of our own sort of need to focus on getting the schools up and running, but also because of the unknowns due to COVID. It seems to be this timeline seems completely unrealistic given the circumstances from my vantage point.
I do think, Daniel, though, we will modify the approach as to how many meetings we hold on it and what we ask of principals and leadership team for those very different reasons. And that's why I want to sit with Irene. We're meeting on Friday to walk it through, because I don't think we can expect the same level of budget work from them. And I don't think it's going to be required. I think it's going to have to be handled a little differently. Yeah. So I agree with you that we have to amend the pressures on the leadership team.
I mean, that's only one part of it. I mean, the other part is the number of unknowns. You know, about where, I mean, so many unknowns.
There are, and I think, again, that's why we're going to take tentative steps forward to at least looking at the structure, but we're going to have to be nimble and budget differently and think about it differently. And I think the first thing will be to continue to anchor what are the uncovered impacts, if anything, with regard to COVID costs. I mean, right now, I think we have them under control in a lot of ways against the grants that have been given. The second half of the year will define where we are, and that's going to be too late to benefit even budgeting later. So I totally see where you are with it. So this is a first pass over the bow for you guys to think like we got to start thinking about the budget. But I think after Irene and I meet on Friday, we'll propose ways we might do some modifications of this so that we're not pressing on leadership team. So just looking ahead.
Couple of thoughts on that discussion, Daniel. The town meeting date is set by the charter. And so, as you probably recall, in this year, there was a discussion associated with the town meeting itself, with the warrant already having been published according to the charter, so many days in advance of the town meeting. And so the town meeting eventually was postponed and reset based on the processes that the Baker administration allowed us to use. But otherwise, it's a set date and it has to be met. Certainly the idea that how we budget this year, even given the fact that town meeting may or may not happen in March, but I think by process that we ended up doing, we could probably still hold it in March. So the date and the schedule for events and to when numbers have to be presented to who are all set in the charter. That doesn't mean that either we do a different kind of budget process, which would probably be defined by the Board of Selectmen and the town manager under the circumstances that we all know, particularly given the fact that we don't know how they all are going to play out between now and, say, March, when the warrant would be published. So I'm not sure how flexible we can be on that, but I think there is some flexibility in the way the budget could be crafted and how we get there. So
yeah, I would agree. And Steve, if you think about it, if you look back to what happened, we revised the budget like 4 times this year from the time we produced it until we voted it. So I think it's going to, I mean, if you look at last year as an example, the amount of meetings for modification and revisioning of the budget, you were there for all of that as we stepped through it, is how we're going to have to be nimble. It might be adding funds, it might be taking them away. So again, I think preliminarily we'll take a first stab. I agree with Daniel around shielding leadership team as much as possible, which means Irene and I pulling more of those pieces in-house between us and putting in front of you guys, streamlining budget discussion process this year would be an important part of maintaining where we are. And I think I have some ideas around how to do that, but we'll have to talk with Irene and figure it out. So I agree with all of you. I think it's going to be as challenging. As I said, we're in the Rapids. We're going to be in Rapids all year. So, we'll take a stab at modifying this to survive where we are right now.
And as you probably recall, the driver really was the state funding piece more than we were backing down from what we were requiring based on the shortfall of state funding and also revenue to the town.
Right.
So I just want to bring up one other point that we need to discuss, and perhaps, Amber, you and I can do this offline, but, the results of the Hastings bid, which we've now all forgotten about, which occurred in, late fall and early spring with the HVAC discussion as well as the sprinkler discussion. It needs to be addressed, particularly in the new capital planning program, because those two items still need to get done. They're very expensive. And, we have town meeting votes, but we know we don't have enough money at least to do the sprinkler system. So in fitting that into what the capital budget's going to be, perhaps you could have a discussion with the town manager as to, when. If we have to wait a year, maybe so be it. But as we know, there is an order to the way the work at Hastings needs to be done, given the sprinkler system is the one that we didn't have enough money for, and that's the one that needs to be first. So,
Yeah, no, I think why don't you and I kind of do a review, because I agree with you. It's on my notes, and I think an important part of next steps and how to kind of keep those things moving forward. So you and I agreed we were going to have a meeting anyway, so I think it would be good to put on the plate and start looking at it.
Yep. Okay. We forget.
I know. I hear you.
All the disasters.
I know. I mean, honestly, we've had multiple. I don't know what I would do if we didn't have a building project. I mean, so we'll see. All right. Thank you, Irene, for getting us started by showing this.
Yes, thank you. It's good to get those dates. We'll take a look and see if anything jumps out. Otherwise, we'll just kind of, roll with it. And you can let us know, Amber, if you're going to make any adjustments to those dates.
Sure. Thanks.
Be in touch about that. All right. Just a reminder that the next meeting of the school committee will be on Wednesday, September 23rd at 6 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I'll second that.
Let's do a roll call vote.
July, yes.
Lisa?
Edinburgh, yes.
Durant, yes.
Very good. And Vincent, yes. 4-0, one member absent. We are adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everybody.